Okay, I'd like to introduce Cheri Harris, and we're going to get started with our content today.
Hello, good morning, and thank you for spending time with me today, so close to the holidays when I can imagine you probably have many other things competing for your attention. My name is Cheri Harris. I am the Certification Program Director. My background is legal, not librarian, not library, but science, but I am a true believer in the cause. So I love being the fact that I have been able to professionally enter the library community. So this is just so you can put a face with the name. I started working at the Indiana State Library on January 17th of this year, so not quite a year. And I just want to tell you that I respect the fact that you spend a lot of your time each day answering other people's questions. So today I am hoping to answer some of yours. And there will be screens periodically in my presentation that indicate that it's a good time to ask questions about the material that I've just covered, as well as I'm going to try and save time at the end for Q&A also.
However, if you have a question during the webinar, go ahead and type it in the chat box, and I'll be monitoring those as well. So like Cheri said, there'll be time during the webinar, time at the end. You can type your questions anytime.
Also, those of you who responded to the survey, and thank you, there were so many responses, and that was very helpful in focusing my attention on where to spend time today. I was not able to include answers to every question for a variety of reasons. Some because I would have needed to ask you a follow-up question to know how to answer it. Some were very specific to individual situations that would probably better be discussed one-on-one. And for those, because I don't know who submitted the comments, contact me. You know, if you were the person who said, send help, give me a call. Maybe after the first of the year, and we can talk about whatever issues you might have. I'm going to raise a couple of the questions specifically and answer them. But if I don't get to your question, please do contact me. So one thing I did, because I know I have so much information I want to cover in a short period of time, I went through and made a frequently asked questions document that's on the website page. There's several links, and one of them is to a frequently asked questions page, and that's a long one. So I also made a one-page resource page that is just links to the key information and the very most important stuff. So I know people have different ways of enjoying taking in information. Some people want all the details, some people want the big picture, and so I've tried to cover a couple different approaches with that. Okay, so moving right along. My plan for today is to hopefully spend about 20 minutes on certification and about 30 minutes on continuing education, dividing it up the way it shows here, and maybe 10 minutes on question and answer at the end. However, if there's a lot of time on question and answer after each section, then that probably will come out a little bit out of the Q&A at the end. And all of this may go out the window, but this is what I'm aiming for, just so you know. Okay, so certification, what do you need to know? The one-page resource page has links to all the important certification documents, which include the certification application, the certification manual, the two-page detailed summary. So those links are all on the one-page resource page that is available to you now. Okay, who needs to be certified? I had questions about this. This is kind of nuts and bolts. Directors, branch and department heads, and professional assistants. Okay, the asterisk there by professional assistants is because, there were several people who wanted me to go over specifically the changes from the new rules that were adopted effective January 1 of 2017. So I've just put a little asterisk in where we're hitting up against those because we've been operating under these rules for a year now. So they're really just the rules to me, to us. But anyway, the key thing is if somebody spends at least 50% of their time on professional librarian activities, that's when they need to be certified. And what are professional librarian activities, you might ask? And I've listed some examples there. I'm not going to read them. I've listed examples of things that are not considered professional librarian activities for purposes of certification. So if you have questions about that, directors, call me and chat me up about that a fair amount. So that is fine.
So just to clarify though, like copy cataloging is still considered a professional librarian activity?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and collection development and reader's advisory, the things that involve really actually, almost everything that's not just administrative
or clerical.
Right. So, but the archivists don't have to be certified, the bookkeepers don't have to be certified, and the circulation staff don't have to be certified unless you mix their duties and they spend half of their time doing things that are considered professional librarian activities. There is a little bit more detail on this in the certification manual, and there is also a FAQ in a couple of pages in the certification manual that are frequently asked questions that delve into some specific questions about this. So when I started, I read the rules and I read the certification manual, and I thought, I'm going to need a way to answer questions that will not require me to go through the rules every single time. And this is what I came up with. And you will see that this is a bit of a continuing theme for me because I do organize information in charts a fair amount. Anyway, the key here is find your library size on the left side, find your job classification across the top, and where those two meet, that will tell you exactly what level of certification is your minimum requirement, and any credential above the minimum requirement is perfectly acceptable for that. So that's the overview of it, and this chart appears in a slightly different format, as not in green, on page 2 of the summary, the detailed summary of certification, and which is also the last page of the certification manual. So this is a key piece of information that I use daily when I am doing certifications. And then the next chart that's in that that manual, I've broken into a couple different slides because it is what is required for each level of certification. And LC 1 through 3 are pretty easy because they all require an MLS and then or an MLS plus a certain amount of experience. So I've broken those out here. I'm not going to go into a lot more detail because if you have one or if you need one, you probably are already familiar with this part. Also, those did not change with the rules that were adopted January 1 of 2017. LC4 did not change either. LC4 requires a bachelor's degree and 15 hours of college level library science credit, one class in each of the categories listed there. LC5 did change with the new rules, and that change is that it used to be that the first three, that the three courses that a person had to take in the 3 library science courses a person had to take to get an LC5 were specified which ones they were. Now it can be any of these 3. However, any of these 5, any 3 of the 5. You can pick which 3 you want. However, I will suggest that if there's any chance at all a person is going to go into administration, they should definitely take that library management and administration course, even though it's not required to get the LC5 specifically now. Mm-hmm. It may be required to get a job that you want in the future. So that's that one is a good one to keep in mind.
And a lot of the folks that are getting an LC5 maybe work at a library that has a small population. Is that right? Possibly.
Yes. Okay. Well, it just depends on their position.
Got it.
Okay. So then LC6, the change that was made about a year ago, was that it used to take 5 years of experience plus a high school diploma or the equivalent in order to get an LC6, and that was reduced to 3 years. Now, the practical application of what that means for you is that if you had 2 years, and when I say you, I'm referring to you or your staff, obviously. If you had 2 years of library science experience and you applied for when you applied for your first temporary permit, you probably thought you were going to get 3 temporary permits in a row until you had 5 years of experience. So now when you apply to renew your temporary permit, I may be contact you and saying, you don't really need another temporary permit right now because you are now eligible for an LC6, and I will want you to go ahead and apply for the 5-year certificate instead. So that's the practical application of that particular change. The LC7 is a brand new requirement that did not exist before the beginning of this year. And it is aimed specifically for the very smallest libraries under 3,000 with a service population under 3,000. And it is those libraries used to be required, the director used to be required to get an LC4. So they had to have a bachelor's degree and all 5 of those library science courses. Now they can get, the director can instead get an LC7. An LC4 is still perfectly legitimate for that person, but an LC7 would require them to have a high school diploma, GED, or the equivalent, plus 3 years of library experience or 9 hours, which is 3 courses of library science credit. In addition, there is a requirement that each of the first 3 years of employment, they take 10 hours of ISL training for library administrators. So this one's a little more complicated. The big picture on this is that if you are a director seeking certification at a library that has a service population below 3,000, you will probably, unless you qualify for one of the other credentials, you will probably need to get 3 temporaries the first 3 years of employment while you take these 10 hours of ISL training before you get full certification at an LC7. So other members of a library that size no longer need to be certified. But if you are already certified and you're a staff person in one of the other job classifications at a small library, we will still send you a letter saying it's time to renew your certificate, and it's the same letter everyone else gets. So it's maybe a little aggressive in terms of you better do this or else. Mm-hmm. And I sometimes get calls from directors saying, I thought that my staff didn't need to certify now. And that's true. It is true, but our system just knows that there's an expiring temporary permit and that person needs to be reminded to renew. So that's how that works. And call me if you have questions about that. So, okay. So I had one of the most interesting questions I had from the survey was, I'm having trouble figuring out how to get those administrative LEUs. And my first thought was, I don't even know what you're talking about. We've got LEUs and TLEUs, but we don't have administrative LEUs. And then I remembered the LC7 requires people to take 10 hours of ISL training, specifically for library administrators, and that's what these administrative LEUs are. So there are 3 annual workshops, the new directors workshop, the bookkeeping workshop, and the budget workshop, that are offered each year. These are programs that are put on usually by LDO, the Library Development Office, rather than PDO, the Professional Development Office. Mm-hmm. So they're nuts and bolts, kind of how to run your library, how to do this report, how to submit this report on this software that is required of you every year. So those are the courses that count for the 10 administrative, aimed at library administration courses that are required, 10 LEUs that are required for someone getting an LC7. Okay, so if you are one of those people getting an LC7 and you have questions about that, contact me, or Karen Ainsley is the one who puts on these programs. So that is what that is there for. Okay, certification question, when to get the initial certificate. When you start a new library position, you get a 6-month grace period, and it's okay if you're not certified during that first 6 months. That grace period is required before I can issue a first temporary permit. And that may be a little bit of a change in policy It is what the rule says. So that's what we're doing now. The rule says, regardless of the date of your application, the effective date of the first temporary permit shall be the date 6 months after first assuming the duties of the covered position. So if I get some people start a new position, they go ahead and apply right away for their temporary certification. The reason we do this is we want everyone to have the same amount of time to reach compliance with their 5-year requirements. So everyone gets the 6 months, and then everyone gets the up to 3 temporary permits. So everyone gets 3.5 years to become certified at the level they need to be for their position. What that means is if I get an early application, I will send a note to that person, an email to that person that says, I have to process your check right away because that's how our cash handling procedures work here. And I can't process your certification right away. So this email is to explain the gap in time from when I process your check and when I process your certification, and I will let you know once I've processed your certification. I did not do a separate slide in this section on temporary certification, but I do have more information about that in the next section. So for 5-year certificates, I can go ahead and issue those right away. So I don't hold on to those unless somebody is, says, I finished my class that is required for this, but the transcripts, I can't get the transcripts for another week or something. I hold on to those then. But anyway, so that's the difference on when to get initial certification. And then I had several questions actually asking about the time frame for renewing a 5-year certificate. Because we do that on a quarterly basis, your expiration date is on your certificate when your certificate expires. So the right now I'm dealing with people whose expiration date is the end of this month.
That's me.
Then when I get back after the holidays, I should be getting applications from people who don't expire until March 31st, but they're not sure. Do I wait? I don't wait until March 31st to submit that, do I? Because then I'd be late. Mm-hmm. That's correct. You probably don't even want to wait till the last week of March to do that, because if I get a backlog, then I may have trouble getting to you, as quickly as you might wish. So you're allowed to submit that application anytime during that quarter that ends March 31st. So I've done this chart just to show you which months are your quarter. So you could actually submit your application if your certification expires March 31st. You can submit your application in the beginning of January. I would wait a week or two into January, to tell the truth, because that's just how our system works. It takes a little while to get the button that says renew to appear, and so I can't actually log it in until that happens in the magical professional licensing agency's database that is how we do our certification. So really any time a few weeks into January to a few weeks into March is the ideal time to renew.
And so there's really no benefit to doing it much earlier than that.
Well, if you do it the quarter before, then I do have to hold it, because I can't process it yet. So, and because we don't allow people to renew early. Some people contact me. In fact, a lot of people contact me and say, I've done all my LEUs. Can I renew my certificate now so I can start over again? And that is not, we don't allow an early renewal for that, because
you're still in your
5-year cycle.
Right.
So the only exception to that is if you are upgrading from one level of certificate to a higher level of certificate, then you can renew whenever you qualify for the next level of certificate. Okay. So with renewals and with initial certifications, the question comes up about transcripts. And I know that our application says on it, you have to send an official transcript every time. You don't really have to send it every time. Actually, it says as warranted for the certification level. So for an LC 1, 2, or 3, all I need is an MLS transcript. I don't need your college transcripts. For an LC 4, I need your college transcript plus a transcript that shows you've taken the 5 library science classes required. For an LC 5, I need a transcript that shows you have at least 60 hours of college courses, or maybe you have a bachelor's degree. I just need your college transcripts for the LC 5 too, to establish that you meet the requirement of 60 hours, and the certificate and the transcript that shows you have the 3 library science classes required. When you don't need to send a transcript, you do not need to send a new transcript with each application unless you've completed additional coursework that impacts the level of certificate you'll be getting. You don't need to send a college transcript with an LC 6 or 7. You can if you want, but what those credentials require is high school completion. So what I need really is information about your high school. And I've listed what information, we need on that. We don't ask for high school transcripts. And I did have a question in the survey about, somebody who was homeschooled and didn't really have documentation of her graduation. I don't need documentation other than I need the application filled out where it asks about high school. I need the name and the type of completion, whether it was a diploma or GED or other equivalency, and the dates. So if you want to send college transcripts, you can, and I will know that you'll still qualify for that, but you don't have to. So, okay, transcripts need to be official, and there's just no way around that. I will wait until you can get an official one if you don't have one. So the official basically means it is sealed in an unopened envelope. If they send it to you first and you send it to us still in that envelope, that's okay. They can send it directly to us, or we do accept electronic transcripts, and they are usually cheaper and they are usually very, very fast.
Cheri, we've had some just questions about, so the transcript is not the diploma, right? It's the official.
It's the coursework that you took at that school.
Got it.
And I don't need your high school diploma either. I don't need any diplomas.
Right, no diplomas, just the transcript.
Just transcripts, okay. So, let's see. Now, do you have questions on certification?
I have a couple. So first of all, I'm going to work backwards. So maybe you can go to the slide before. For renewal, are transcripts required? Let's go back one more. So you don't need to send a transcript with a renewal.
Right.
Because you'll have them on file from last time.
Because when you renew, you've already established you meet that credential. And this time you're just saying, I want to extend it 5 more years. Mm-hmm. And in almost every time I've checked a file, your MLS transcript is there. Or if that's what people are concerned about.
Concerned about, right.
And that's what I tend to get multiples of. Sometimes I get multiples of college transcripts too. The one exception to this is if you are going from being grandfathered in a position to being ungrandfathered. Let's say I had this recently with a director who moved from one library to another. So they can't, the grandfathered certificate is not portable and does not travel with you to a new library. So that person needed to apply with an application and submit the documentation for that application. I did not have an MLS transcript in his file yet, so he did need to send me one. But almost every other time I have checked to see if I have transcripts already in your file, I do. But when I get a call or an email about this, I usually just go check the file, mm-hmm. and if it's in there, I let you know, you're good, we already have it.
Okay, do you suggest that we send you applications in by certified mail?
I would say if you are sending $50 in cash, which I don't recommend doing, then you might want to do it certified mail. Sometimes people wait until the very last day and then they want to send it to me overnight or 2-day. Mm-hmm. And if that makes them feel better about submitting it late, then sure. That's fine. But most people do not send them certified. They just send them regular mail.
And this is a question from earlier. Is an assistant director considered a department head or a professional assistant?
Oh, that's such a good question. So the 3 job classifications, director, department or branch head, or professional assistant, those determinations generally are made at the local level. And it depends a little bit on your board and your library director and how you want to do that. Because we don't know, I mean, every assistant director doesn't necessarily have the same job description right now. So in general, if the assistant director is responsible for supervising people, which I would guess most are, it probably makes sense for them to get a branch or department head certification. If you're a really small library and that's really not what they do other things, then they may not need that. But that's going to be your board's call on that, I think.
Okay. And then Alyssa has a really specific question about her specific circumstance, about timeline. So I've just told her to go ahead and email you directly.
Okay.
And you don't have to apologize, Alyssa. That's fine.
Okay.
Okay, one more question, and then I'm going to let you move on because I know you've got lots more to say. So the question is, if we have not heard from you regarding our application within a certain time period, do you suggest we contact you? Should we follow up? Like if we haven't heard anything after we've sent in our renewal or our application?
Well, at the moment, I am really caught up because I'm trying to make sure everyone is done before I leave at the end of this week. And I have maybe one sitting in my file, but I have not emailed everyone that I have certified. One thing you could do is you could look online to see if you're certified yet, because that e-verification will tell you if you are or not. You can contact me if you're concerned about what happened. Honestly, I get people calling me about certifications that I never received the application in the mail. So mail is not guaranteed these days, in my opinion. I mean, I have a lot of mail.
But most people send mail and not certified mail.
Right,
yeah.
Right. Okay. I'm just saying, things do go missing. But I've also had, I've had checks that took over a month to get to me from the day the person said they put it in the mail. Mm-hmm. And I never know if people, I'm assuming people are telling me that correctly. Anyway.
Yeah. And then we had one more question about completing LEUs, but will we cover that in a minute?
Yeah, okay. I'm going to talk about LEUs. Okay, so we're going to keep going. Continuing education is next. I have a little bit of a preview before we get to just a background of what's required. So these have asterisks on them because this did change with the new rules, which is that the requirements, the total requirements stayed the same. It's based on jobs classification. Directors need 100 LEUs, department or branch heads need 75, and professional assistants need 50. It used to be that of those LEUs, 10 needed to be technical LEUs. Now, for any certificate issued after January 1st of this year, you're required to get 20 technicals. Same overall number, you just have to get more of them. More of them have to be technical courses, technology-related courses. So that's the total concept here. I had an interesting question. Someone was asking about specialists 2 and 3 and whether they really should be at the same level as director on this chart. This is what the rule says now, and they are there. But as for whether or not they should be, I would encourage that person to contact me because I'd like to hear your reasoning, but that may be something that doesn't make sense and might merit looking at raising the issue for a change. Okay. In addition, under the new rules, anyone who got a temporary certification in 2017, if they want to renew that temporary permit, they will need to include proof of taking 10 LEUs and a statement of progress towards meeting their 5-year certificate requirements. And there's a couple things that I've been getting questions on this. The first question is submit proof of taking 10 LEUs. I thought we were never supposed to send you anything unless we were being audited. And that is true if you have a 5-year certificate because we have this whole audit structure in place and we only look at your LEUs if you are being audited. And I have a whole section on audits coming up. So, but there is no audit system for temporary permits. And so we are in fact asking you to submit your certificates from at least 10 LEUs that you've taken in the past year and a statement of progress. I sent out an email to the listserv maybe last week or the week before about those statements, and I gave examples of statements. And I think I've included those statements in the FAQs, so that if you want to look at sample statements, those are on page 4 of the FAQs. Okay. And the other thing that changed from last year to this year was we've added a variety of other ways to get LEUs, and these include a category for non-library. All of these have caps on them. You can't get unlimited numbers in each of these areas, but you can get things that wouldn't have been approved before, or maybe they would have been approved before, but they probably shouldn't have been because they aren't library related. Now can qualify for non-library related credit. You can get some credit for participating on professional committees. You can get an hour credit for giving a workshop. And let me tell you, especially right now, I know that you spend more than an hour getting ready to give a 1 hour program. I know that that's a very small token of your acknowledgement of the time spent. But anyway.
But that's the best we can do.
But that's what we can do. It's better than nothing. You can get some credit for publishing an article and for attending a roundtable. And I have on here details about what the caps are, and I'm going to just go through those. You can read those if you want. I don't think I want to take the time to do that right now. But this is an important piece. Lately, Suzanne has been getting a lot of emails, and that she has been forwarding to me, but also answering, saying, how many LEUs have I earned so far?
We don't know.
We do not keep track of that, and you should be keeping track of that information, and you are responsible for documenting your professional development. Now, a lot of you asked, what's the best way to do that? And I have included, well, first of all, I know, for example, that Suzanne keeps a spreadsheet on her computer, and she enters everything she earns in that, and that's how she tracks it.
I stopped once I got twice as many as I needed.
I did post to the page that has the other resources a form that I put together that gives you a way of keeping track. It's kind of a checklist, and it has the caps on it. I also posted this chart, which is here, not so that you can actually read and take in all this information right now, but just to let you know, this tells you different types of LEUs, whether or not you have to get them approved ahead of time, whether or not there's a cap on it, and what type of documentation or proof you will need to submit in order to establish that you have that credit. All of those you don't submit until you, until you are notified that you are have been selected for a random audit, with the only exception being temporary permits submit evidence of having taken at least 10 LEUs when they renew their temporary permit. Okay. Getting LEU programs approved. Actually, did I have, okay, I'm getting mixed up. Let me go back. Okay, from here. I guess I didn't have a question slide after that. I'm going to keep going. Do you have questions?
We might have a couple. So Christine was wondering, are Gale courses approved for LEU credit? And I don't think she means like trainings from Gale on their products. I think
Gale Senage courses are on the pre-approved provider list.
So they're okay.
And we're going to visit the pre-approved provider list if we have time before the end of this.
So for the most part, those are yes.
Yes.
Right.
Anything on the pre-approved, any providers on the pre-approved provider list, you can take courses from without getting individual approval for them.
Okay. And then is the same form used for applying for your certificate and for renewing?
Yes, one form.
Okay. Let me see if I missed any others really quick.
And there's a link to that form on the resource page.
Okay, and maybe Courtney can pop that in. Allison.com courses. You know what? I don't think we can answer specific provider questions right now.
I will show you how to check. How to check the answer to this in just a few minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, so getting LEU programs approved. I don't have a lot of information here on this because it's a pretty straightforward process. You submit an application. The form is on our website. There's a link. And that link is also on the resource page. I put all these key links on the one-page resource sheet. Include all of the information requested. And also on the frequently asked questions, I have a little more information than I put on the slide about what we want when you are doing that. I think I did. Anyway, it is helpful. It doesn't say on the application for LEU providers, it doesn't say that you have to tell me what date the program is, but it's helpful if I know that. It does say that you need to submit a short biography, and it does say an agenda outline or short description. Whatever you do, an agenda outline or short description, it has to tell me 2 pieces of information: the length of time it's going to take, and also what is the content about, because I need more than just a title in order to review it. So these are, and then the key thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is that you are supposed to submit these 30 days in advance of your program.
Say that again.
30 days in advance of the program. Why 30 days in advance of the program? It actually can take me that long to approve a program, because I looked at my statistics here and I approved over, I think, 550 programs in the first 3 quarters of 2017. And I did not start until the middle of January. So, and I approved over 125 programs in the month of October alone. So I need time to get a look at them. And the more complete your information is, the easier it will be for me to approve. So, couple quick questions on getting LEU programs approved.
We don't really have any on that, but I have a couple other cleanup questions.
Okay.
When starting a new certification level, do the LEU requirements start over from scratch?
Yes.
But
yes.
you still have
if
5
you are
years,
upgrading,
right?
You get a new 5-year period, and your 5-year period starts with you at 0, and you have to earn all of them. Yes.
And then does the beginning of our time frame start 5 years prior to the expiration date?
Well, not exactly. Yes, but 5 years prior to the expiration date is going to be the last day of the quarter that you applied in, and you may have applied earlier than that. So if you are fine doing 5 years prior to the expiration date, that will, every certificate you have in that period will be valid. It may be that you could have included a couple of earlier certificates if you applied at the beginning of the quarter rather than the end of the quarter. And if you need to know what that date is, you can contact me.
And then we have one more question. What type of documentation is acceptable for external committee work?
Oh, that's on the chart.
That's on the chart.
Basically, the committee chair or
Just
someone from the organization needs to give you a letter or certificate.
Okay.
Okay. So the audit process, and I will say one of the questions I got on this is I have no idea what you're talking about. So I'm going to just give a brief overview on that. You are required to keep your LEU certificates for 90 days from when your certificate expires, 90 days after your certificate expires.
So for example, I expire at the end of this year. I just have to hang on to all the documentation from the LEUs that I had for the previous 5 years for 3 months.
Correct. And that's even though she already has her new certificate, because
I do have my new certificate.
she doesn't expire until the end of this month, and it's after expiration. It's next month that we will be sending out notification to people saying, you have been selected for a random audit, send us your certificates. So you have to hang on to them for 90 days after your expiration. In the meantime, you should start a new file for certificates that you're earning under your new, for LEUs that you're earning under your new certificate, while keeping the ones from the previous 5 years. Okay, so every quarter, the professional licensing agency, not me, but they just tell me who it is, they randomly select 10% of the renewals from the previous quarter to be audited. And if you are selected, you'll get a letter from PLA. Actually, they send it, but it's signed by Jay Spear. Telling you to send proof of LEUs to me.
And PLA here means Professional Licensing Agency,
yes.
and not the Public Library Association.
Thank you, yes. Okay, so what happens when I get your certificates? First, I make sure they fall in the dates of your most recently expired certificate, and then I divide them into 2 piles. They're either pre-approved providers, those count, and I don't have to do anything more with those, or they're all other providers, and they are not automatically eligible for LEUs. I have to verify that the specific provider and course was approved by the state library, and that the approval was in effect when you took the course. And then if I can verify it, I can count it. So this is a little bit trickier because sometimes the name might change from when we approved it to when they offered the course, and then it can be hard to match it up. Sometimes people might include certificates they got from programs that weren't library programs at all. For example, I've gotten a certificate from a 4-H program, and 4-H has never applied to us for approval of any of their programs. Or I've gotten certificates from Universal Class. Universal Class has applied for approval of programs, but they haven't renewed those approvals last 2 years. And I had people who took classes after the approval expired, but then wanted credit for them. So I set those aside. And the reason I'm telling you this is that if you get more credits than you need, and you send those to me when you are audited, it makes the audit a whole lot easier for everyone.
So if you have extras, just send them all.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Okay. Okay. Now I had a question on the survey saying, how often does this happen? And I know I've addressed that a little bit by saying quarterly. I do audits quarterly, but your exposure to the audit process happens every 5 years when you renew. Theoretically, it could happen twice in 6 years, but it won't happen in the middle of your next certificate because no one's going to look at your compliance until you renew, for what it's worth. And I had a question about what a library should expect from an audit over certification, and I just want to clarify, this is an audit of the individual's compliance, which may reflect on the library standards indirectly or maybe directly, but is not the same thing. When I do an audit of LEU certification, I'm just looking at the individual's compliance with the certification requirements, not at the whole library. And then I had somebody ask, why is the audit process necessary? And I thought that was a great question because I wasn't here when this scheme was developed, but clearly the committee that developed it believed professional development was important and important enough that it should be mandatory. And the only way to make it mandatory is to verify compliance. This is a way to spot check those verifications. If we didn't do any audits, that would mean that professional development was optional.
Because you'd be on your honor, right?
Right. It would be up to you to decide. Yeah. Okay. And then also people want to know, do I have to send copies of all the certificates, or is a list of sessions enough? And you have to send copies of all the certificates. Actually, you should make copies of them before you send them to us so that you can keep copies and send them to us. Okay, there are sanctions for failing to comply. If you can't produce evidence that you have earned the required number of LEUs, then you are subject to discipline under state statute. And the best practice, as I mentioned before, go above and beyond, take extra LEUs. I would suggest at least 10% over what you need is a really good idea. And my practice tip to you is that these are minimums, and always aim to get more is just a really good idea.
Are scanned copies acceptable, or do you need the mail originals? I mean, I'm assuming copies are just fine for LEUs.
You know, I know that a lot of places are emailing you their certificates, so you're printing out a copy. You're printing out that copy. So whether it's the first copy you print out or the second copy you print out, right. I won't know the difference. Yeah,
so that's fine. So we do have a question. What does happen if somebody fails the audit? Will their director be notified?
Well, yes, probably. I will say so occasionally there are certificates that aren't very clear, or I can't find the approval letter. I would do a little more investigation if people didn't have other certificates I could count instead. So far, thank goodness, everyone has had enough extra that if I have questions about one, I set it aside. And if I get done and there aren't enough, I would go back to the ones I set aside and try and investigate them a little bit further. But the sanctions for failing to comply are that the board could revoke your certificate, could suspend your certificate, could issue a letter of reprimand, and could place you on probationary status until you get sorted out. We would probably contact you before we contact the director. Sometimes, though, I contact you and let you know that I'm contacting your director, not because you've done anything wrong, but because the in-house certificates that they're providing are problematic for some reason, and I want them to know that they need to maybe do that a little bit differently. So to date, I have let you know, I've let the librarian know first before I contact the director.
I think that's it.
Okay. Now. And let's see how we are on time. We have not a lot of time left. Okay, finding LEU programming. And this, I really want to, I put this information just as you see it here, three different places. It's in this PowerPoint. It is also in your FAQs, and it's also on that one-page resource sheet, because this is what I think most people wanted to know, is how do I find programming? And so I am actually going to leave my PowerPoint for a moment here and go to our website, and I'm going to walk you through getting from the main part of our website here to the professional development part of our website. The first thing you do is you click on Services for Libraries along the left-hand side menu, and then you click Services for Libraries again.
Which we know is asinine.
And then from here, you can click on library certification or LEU workshops or continuing education to get to the meat of our portion of the website, the part that we actually put up and maintain. So when you get in here, clicking on one of those things, I will just tell you that my favorite link, and I would encourage any of you to bookmark this one, is Find Training, because I can get to just about anywhere from that. Now, if what you're looking for is information about certification, obviously click on certification. Also, you've got the forms, the application for certification, the application for LEU provider, and the conference form are right in this box over here. So keep that in mind, easy to get to. But the first thing I want to tell you is that, you can go to our calendar to find programs that we are offering. So that is here, ISL calendar. It's also across the top. It's easy to find. So this is how you can find out the programs we're offering from the State Library. Most of those are free, and most of those are available both live and then later on archived. And
you mean like a live webinar, and then our
live webinar, right?
Later,
well,
yeah.
and but there's also some of these are face-to-face programs too.
Yeah.
So, but everything we offer that's being offered directly by the State Library is going to be on this calendar, and you can find descriptions of it, and then there will be a link to sign up for it. So that's the first step. Okay, let's say you want something more than that. We'll go back, and the next thing that I suggested on here was go to the website page, upcoming free training right here, this one. Upcoming free training, this is a calendar I put together of free trainings. It includes ISL trainings, but it also includes trainings that are not ISL trainings if they are free and only if they're free. So here's the list up for January that I have up right now. The list grows bigger as the month comes closer because there's more stuff available. But some of these, and all of these have links to either information about the program or registration for the program. So these are all programs that we have approved, or they're by approved providers usually, or we've approved them, and they are free. And I try to list how many credits you should get, whether the credits should be LEUs or TLEUs, whether it's a webinar or in person. And so that is a resource that I spend time sifting through various websites trying to find what's out there and list it in a way that you can have a little bit easier access to it. So that's your second suggestion on finding LEUs. Third suggestion is, if we go back again, And this is what, oh, I have to go back one more. Okay, back to this Find Training page. The next link down here is pre-approved training provider list. And I know.
So I know some of you guys have the old link. This is the new link.
We redid it. It used to be a grid that was very busy, and I completely revised it. I made it so that all the ALA stuff comes under ALA. And let's say maybe, since we had a joke about Public Library Association before, it's right here. If you click on this, it'll take you to their website. If they have a specific training page on their website, it should take you to that. These trainings, the trainings you reach from this page are not necessarily free, and some of them may be inexpensive, some of them may be very expensive, but they are all approved. Anything you reach from this website should be pre-approved, no problem, no question. You don't have to get permission first. You're good to go. So let's say you're not thinking to look at, you're looking for Public Library Association under P and you're not finding it, and you don't think to look under American Library Association because you're thinking Public Library Association, not American Library Association. From here, you can do, I'm doing Control F. Oh, is that going to work for me?
Yeah, it is. It's okay.
Oh, okay. That brings me up a little find box, and I could just do, I would normally spell it out.
Just stick your cursor.
Yeah. Okay.
It's fun to do live demos.
PLA, right, especially not on my actual computer. If I enter that, it's gonna bring it up. So if it doesn't bring up PLA, then spell it out, make sure it brings it up. But you can search for things on here and not have to scroll back and forth and try and figure out where it is. So that's my big tip on finding even more. And this is long. There's a lot of stuff on here. Finding LEUs, finding TLEUs. There are a lot of organizations on here that are tech oriented. So finding LEUs. Okay, then the next step, the fourth step I had on here is taking courses from Linda, and I want to show you that too. For the person who asked about Allison, there's a page on here that explains, and I don't remember off the top of my head whether Allison has to be a course that's listed or not. If I got a certificate from Allison, I would look it up to see. If you're taking a course from Allison, you should look it up here to see. So this tells you you have to make sure it's 30 minutes long. A webinar has to be over 30 minutes long, so it has to be 31 minutes long. And then you know, there is a list of approved courses for that. If it's not on the approved course list, you should contact me first ahead of time before you take it if you want to get credit for it. Okay, but Linda is the one I wanted to tell you about. Lynda.com has tons and tons and tons of TLEU courses available because it's got just loads of computer-oriented stuff on it.
And these are free.
And these are free.
Because
the state library pays for subscriptions for librarians and library staff members to take these courses. So if you are not already signed up, and your courses do not have to be on this list, we will give you credit for anything you take from lynda.com. They will give you a certificate, and that's how you establish that you took it. Their certificate will say maybe it says continuing education on it, but we will count that as LEUs. You scroll to the bottom of that page, and there's a little form for you to fill out in order to get access to lynda.com through us at no cost to you. It is a cost to us. And there's a limited number of subscriptions we have, and my understanding is we are approaching that limit. So if you want to make sure you get access to lynda.com through us,
do it today.
The sooner the better. The sooner the better. Okay, so that is I know a number of you said you have trouble finding TLEUs, and my recommendation would be lynda.com. Okay, I think we have about 4 minutes left for more questions if you have them. And I'm sorry I shorted you on the question and answer at the end, but I did give you some question and answer time in the middle. And remember to check the FAQ document to see if a question you might have put on the survey is there too.
Right, so any questions? And I do want to thank Cheri. There is so much information when we're talking about certification and LEUs. So Victoria says, please repeat the link for lynda.com. How do you see if you've already signed up for lynda.com? I will have Courtney put the link in to get to lynda.com in the chat there, but do you know how to see if you've already signed up?
Okay, so if you saved your, the real question is, you may need to reset your password if you signed up and you don't remember. If you signed up years ago and you never took any classes on it, you may be archived already and not able to access it, and that's how we're continuing to give people access. So, but if you just type in lynda.com in your search engine, it will take you to their opening page, and then try to log in with your email address, and if you have a record of your password, or you can try to put your email address in and ask them to send you and tell them you forgot your password. And if you really get stuck with that, you can send an email to me or to Wendy, and we can get to the bottom of it. But in general, I would say try self-help first. Also, if you sign up and you're already signed up, we don't issue you a new spot there. So I don't know, maybe we send you an email saying you already have an account.
Mm-hmm. And I also, Bara makes a good point. She's from Monroe County Public Library, and they have a separate subscription for Lynda. So she says, I want to withdraw my sign up. So essentially she's saying, I don't want to take a seat.
That's fabulous.
And so she just needs to tell Wendy at this point.
Yes.
Right?
Or, here is my email address. You can email me and I'll forward it on to Wendy, or you can email Wendy directly. Mm-hmm. But that's great.
And then Tasha said she went to lynda.com and it's telling her that she would owe them money. So what she needs to do is go through us to take the courses for free.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So Tasha, don't just go to lynda.com. You want to go to the link that Courtney posted in the chat, and scroll to the bottom of the page, and
you fill out that little form and you submit it. And it doesn't happen automatically, in that a person needs to get that email with your request and enter it in lynda.com. So over the holidays, it may be a couple days before that happens, or even a week before that happens. Yeah. Most days it happens the same day, but not always. If somebody is out, like if Wendy goes out of town, usually she has me do them or somebody else do them. So we try and keep up with it, but be patient. If it doesn't happen right away, it could be because someone's not here who should be doing that.
Well, I really want to thank Cheri. We're getting a lot of thank yous through the chat. We do want to confirm that, yes, we did record this, and I think I'll even capture the chat since there were so many good questions that we had. So I think at this point we'll go ahead and close the recording. However, Cheri and I will still be here to answer any more questions through the chat.
Let me just make my final pitch is, if you're like me and you think of your question right after you get off of this webinar, or even the next day, that's fine. My job is to make sure that you know what you need to do to stay in compliance. And also, I'm the sort of person who likes solving problems. So if there's an issue that we have trouble getting to the bottom of, we'll figure it out one way or another. So really, truly, call me or email me anytime with questions. I do sometimes get busy seasons where I get, I kind of have a big stack of certifications and a big stack of LEUs to approve. And so sometimes it may take me a little bit longer than other times to answer your question. If that happens, feel free to contact me a second time. And also, I just want to say that I like getting feedback, whether it's positive or negative. Like everyone else, I prefer positive feedback. But if you give me negative feedback about something, whether it is, a process or the service you're getting in, around certification issues, or whether it's content-based, I'm likely to thank you for sharing that negative feedback with me, because I think it is information and a way to improve how I do my job. So do not hesitate to let me know kudos or complaints. I will appreciate the information.
And we feel that way across the board at the State Library. So, okay, well, thank you guys all so much. I'm going to go ahead and close the recording now. So thank you so much, Cheri.
All right, thank you.